this is Sean. Welcome back to the channel. As you can see, I'm on the road. In the next 20 minutes, I want to talk about what direction is law enforcement heading, or what direction have they been coming from, and how does it affect private security. And I want to talk about the San Bernardino school incident. I think it happened in Highland. The incident went viral. We'll talk about that. But just some admin stuff I want to talk about right now. Guys, right now, just concentrate on the audio. Do not concentrate on the video. I have absolutely nothing to show you on camera. The time is 6:13 in the a.m. Pacific time. Hopefully, wherever you're at, you're having a good day. You're having a good time, or you had a great day. Well, let's just say you had a great day, so to speak, because it was graveyard shift, and that's your day, and then you are going to go to sleep pretty soon. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your time, everybody. I appreciate everybody. What's up, Mike from the Professional Security Journal? I see you're in the live section here. Hey, so yesterday I did a video on black and white vehicles. Is this something that should be done in private security? And, I got mixed thoughts about it. And something pretty neat happened. The owner of Sunset Public Safety, I think they're based out of Orange County, California. He reached out to me. The CEO of that company reached out to me in a friendly gesture, in a very polite way. So I think that's pretty neat, guys. I think it's very important to open up dialogue in the security industry. We need to regulate ourselves. I just think that it'd be awesome to be able to reach out to anybody within our network and just say, hey, you know what, this is what's going on. How can we resolve this issue, or what are your thoughts on it? And, let's fix it. Or if it doesn't need to be fixed, then okay, this is what's going on, and let's move forward. Because right now, I'm telling you, CalSAGA, CalSAGA, they are running the show in California. They have lobbyists, pay lobbyists, and they work very hard to get some of these laws passed that have an interesting and sometimes detrimental effect on private security in California. So I just think it's so awesome for these company owners to reach out. I mean, obviously, if you're going to do a video on a security company, it's going to attract a lot of attention. But what's just great is just that somebody actually reaches out. I'm a little bit old school. I like to communicate through a phone call or in person. I know I'm kind of far away. I'm all the way at the southern border in Imperial County. It's really hard to meet up with people, and even people over here I have difficulty meeting up with just because of the time restrictions. But I'm more old school, like to see someone face to face, or even through a phone call, if I have the time. And sometimes I actually do have the time. What's up, Giannis Protective Services, and what's up, Treston Miller? Welcome in in the morning. Thank you so much for chiming in. Anyhow, in the future, hopefully, we get some security companies that are willing to go live with me. Like, let's just say there's a security company that, they don't put the words private security on their patches, and then, we get a bunch of complaints. I just think it's better if we can have a discussion on live, on YouTube Live. There's no script. There's no notes. You don't know what's going to be asked of you, and you just go at it, right? And years ago, maybe more than a year ago, I went to Citywide Protection Services. Lucas, one of the co-founders over there, invited me to the office and allowed me to film. And the only restriction that he had was just blur out some of the addresses in the CAD system. That's it. He said everything else you could put on camera. And there's some things that's like, there's some items, I don't want to get too much into it. I'm like, I don't think I want to show that on camera because I don't want the video to be demonetized. But again, there's a lot of people that are not willing to go live. Now, I don't mean to toot the horn here, but Damien from the Security Guard channel, we often conflict with ideas. I do respect him a lot, and occasionally we'll go on live together. But when he goes on live, sometimes I know what he's going to ask, and then sometimes I don't. But I tell him, you can ask me anything, and I think that's how discussion should be, not edited, right? Just live, right? Give me 1 second here. Just live, no filter, you go for it, right? And I think any security company owner who's confident in their abilities, they have nothing to hide, they are articulate, they're able to do that, just live. No filter, nothing. And it takes a lot, guys, to do that. And again, nobody has volunteered to go live. Security company owner. Anyhow, let's talk about the San Bernardino school incident. So the San Bernardino is a large suburb in California. I think it's the 70s or the 80s. A huge population of Los Angeles. I want to say the criminal population. And it's sometimes disadvantaged, right? I mean, you commit a lot of crimes. You probably come from a disadvantaged area. Anyhow, I don't want to say the words that they were dropping off people capable of committing a lot of crimes in San Bernardino, but that was the thing in the 70s and 80s. Like, hey, you know what? Our life in Los Angeles just isn't working out. We're talking about parents. Let's move to a non-gang infested neighborhood in San Bernardino and start life all over again. So what you get is like, the 14-year-olds, the 15-year-olds, the 16-year-olds, the ones who we have difficult molding back into society. They recreate their gang, and then they continue the cycle of job security for you guys all over again. There's jails, there's a county jail system in that area, and again, sometimes you gotta just release somebody without a bus ticket, and they end up in those areas. It's kind of like I think Banning, California. It's located maybe like 30-40 minutes from Palm Springs drive. There's a county jail there, and then some of the inmates just get released like on the street, and they end up in the Banning area. Sometimes they make their way into Beaumont, like the lower part of the hill. But anyhow, San Bernardino is a mess. At one point in time, it was like number 2 or number 1, like crime capital of California. It probably ranked in the nation of the United States. I worked at a San Bernardino hospital, and I work hospital security there, and you can hear occasionally on a Friday or Saturday night gunfire, and then return gunfire, and then within like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you have an ambulance rolling hot in the ambulance bay. That's how insane San Bernardino is. So the school district there, they have their own school police department. I do know some people that work there, and I know a little bit about the system. I also think that they have a private security force as well. The officers there, they have to go through the same basic police academy than anybody else. They're sworn under, I think it's like 830.2 or something like that, or 0.33. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Sworn police officers, they're required to go through PSP training. That's your professional skills program, professional perishable skills. I don't know. I forgot. It's a perishable skills program. You got to go through 4 hours of arrest and control every year, 4 hours of firearm, 4 hours of use of force. That includes de-escalation. I think a 4-hour communication class, again, to help you de-escalate situations. And then you got to go through some elective classes. Okay, so that's San Bernardino. What you have is you have somebody that needs to go to jail, maybe a juvenile, maybe a teenager, maybe 18 or 19, maybe an adult. I don't know, but you have one officer, a female officer, who's struggling to put somebody under control, right? And then you have the male officer who has 2 stripes, acting as security. And then you end up having this female, this hoodlum grabbing this lady by the hair, this lady officer by the hair, and yanks her backwards and actually controls her. She controls the head. If you control the head, you control the body. I don't want to refer to officers as snakes or lizards or crocodiles, but it's like a crocodile or like a snake. If you control the head, you control the body. That's just an extremely bad metaphor. Oh man, what's up, Mace Donio Sains from Illinois? Give me a second, guys. What I saw was a reflection of, I want to say, the war on police, right? The defunding of the police. That's what I saw. And no, you can't blame everything on defunding the police, but seeing law enforcement through at least my lens in 2 decades, I seen a huge paradigm shift. Law enforcement right now in the shift has got to hands off. Hey, I'm not going to touch this individual. I'm not going to use force because I don't want to go viral. Unfortunately, those 2 officers are viral anyways. But just imagine if they batoned this group, right? I think one of the male officers had one of the RCB batons, some type of collapsible baton. I don't know. You guys take a look at it. Or maybe it was a monadnock. I don't know. But a baton is a good weapon of choice to give you distance and to clear the area. When you start swinging the baton, you're creating some space because obviously nobody gets hit. But when you're security, you're security. There's no really arresting going on. You provide security for your partner, and if you don't provide security for your partner's going to get grabbed by the hair. Other alternative is pepper spray, right? I don't know why that wasn't used, but hey, I wasn't there. Use your alternatives. Taser, if you use it correctly, you can affect multiple people. However, with some of the tasers, if you have one under control with the taser, you make contact, you can get another one. I think it's Taser 7 and up. You can get another one, right? But the problem is, if the second person, you get 2 people that get hit with the taser, if you reactivate, or let's say you energize the last person, but the first person's cooperative, that's a huge use of force question. And then as for the Taser 10, you could put five people under current. That's 5. Let's just say 1 out of the 5 are not cooperating, then you recycle them with the current. But the problem is all 5 get it. And what justification do you have for using force against all 5? There's nothing. So there's pros and cons. Lethal force, there's something called disparity of force, but there's something also called optics. If those were males, right, in the teens, would that be a lethal force situation? I don't know. Does it look bad? Yeah. If it's females, like what you guys saw, and use deadly force, how does that look? Is it appropriate? Is it necessary? I don't know. But what I can tell you is there's something called disparity of force, and you have to articulate that. Is a jury going to believe your articulation if they're males attacking you? Probably. How about females? I don't know. You guys might have insight on this, but I don't know. I don't have answers for you. Now, there's also something in law enforcement where they're kind of hands off when it comes to mental health. There's a couple of cases that state that basically you cannot create the deadly situation. So, for example, if somebody is holed up in their house, there's nobody in the house, and they're threatening to end their life, their own life, and let's just say they have a firearm or knife. If you go in there, right, in an attempt to save their life, and you end up in a shooting incident, you're gonna be heavily scrutinized by the courts. Could you have de-escalated? Could you have detached yourself from the situation? Could you have removed yourself from the situation? And quite honestly, what's happening now is law enforcement is not responding. And if they are responding, they might send a drone. The officers might be staging on another block, but they're going to avoid going in front of the house, or even houses away. And why is that? Well, because this person might come out of their house and they might escalate the situation into an OIS, an officer involved shooting. That is very possible, right? So what law enforcement is telling family is, we'll try to talk to them over the phone, but we don't want to hurt this person. Now, you might be saying, well, law enforcement has tools of the trade like a taser, a ballistic shield, a beanbag. Yes, but that's not less lethal. What the stats tell us is that when you introduce a less lethal item in a suicide by cop situation, that person is most likely, or more likely than not, going to elevate the situation into an OIS. That's what usually happens. Look at all of the officer-involved shootings videos and look to see what happened before the deadly force encounter. Now, I'm not talking about gunfights. That's different. I'm talking about the knife situation. A suspect has a knife, a bat, a pipe, something like that. You're going to see that many times there's a less lethal instrument introduced by law enforcement, and at the end of the day, it's going to end with an OIS. That's very common, because the person looks at it like, hey, you know what? This is my last time to end my life. I can't do it myself. I'm going to have somebody else do it. And if they're going to introduce a less lethal option, I'm not going to carry out my mission. So let me move forward and let me rush these officers. That's what usually happens. How does this affect private security? Well, let's just say you have somebody who is causing a disturbance. They're on fentanyl, they're on meth, they're on something, and they're armed in an apartment complex. Law enforcement says, you know what? We don't want to respond, because if we respond and we show up, we're going to elevate the situation. We're all going to be sued individually, and as a department, it's not worth it. We'll try to talk to them over the phone. If that doesn't work, then we're clear, as long as there's nobody in that apartment. Well, if you're private security, let's just say the officer's clear, right? If you're private security, guess who has to deal with that individual later on? You guys have to deal with that individual. How about the mentally ill person that enters your property all the time, and maybe they're punching themselves in the face or something like that? And law enforcement feels like if they intervene, it's going to be a worse situation. There's going to be use of force. They're going to be viral. The optics look terrible. And they feel like if they intervene, there's going to be more force used than the person using some level of force on themselves. So what do? They just clear, right? And then that person might end up on another property in which you patrol. Now you have to deal with that individual. And law enforcement doesn't want to make contact because they already cleared the call, right? And that's a thing, guys. Those of you who work hospital security, things are getting more dangerous. You're going to have law enforcement officers dropping off these patients at your hospital doors, right? Law enforcement can't deal with them anymore. The jails are just overrun. Mass populations in it. They're running out of resources. They're running out of manpower. The shifts are short. They can't recruit anybody who's qualified to do the job or who doesn't pass backgrounds. What are they doing to these individuals who are causing disturbances? And the criminal justice system has tied their hand behind their back. What do? Well, what they're doing is they're going to another city that has a hospital and they're dropping off these patients, right? Because most of the time it's a behavioral health challenge that they're having to overcome. So the best course of action is obviously a psychiatric unit that can deal with it. Now, hospitals, I can tell you in California, a physician can place somebody under a hold, like a medical hold. I think it might be more than 48 hours. I don't know, but they can do that. And then what they end up doing is they transfer that patient to a psychiatric hospital, like later on through ambulance. That happens in the absence of a behavioral health hospital. Okay, but that's one of the options. Okay, and also in California, there's a new law that passed that if you're going through an overdose problem or you're overdosing, you have a choice to go to jail or to go to the hospital. Let me be clear. There's a law that was passed maybe 8-9 years ago that basically says that if you are going through an overdose, and you rather go to the hospital than jail, then you can go. So what happens is the police department or the fire department or an ambulance drops off this person at your hospital. That person's going to cause a disturbance at your hospital and continue. Am I not correct? And I'm asking you guys who work hospital security. And if you don't, okay, this person from the hospital is going to make their way onto your private property, your apartment complex, your parking lots, the business district that you patrol. They're going to end up there. And how do you know that they came from the hospital? Because they have the hospital ban. If they have a hospital ban and they're causing a disturbance on your property, oh crap, you have an issue, right? And then the same thing in California, we call it 647F. It's 647 subsection F of the California Penal Code. Basically, when you're unable to take care of the safety of yourself, right? Due to an intoxicated state, that's the 647F. Again, if you have an option to get medical treatment, right? And honestly, as a law enforcement watch commander who has a lot of experience, I don't want to have somebody who's overdosed, somebody who's not able to take care of their safety in our holding cell, because it's a liability issue, right? Every 15 minutes, I got to monitor that person. I think it's 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what state that they're in. But you have to do constant monitoring. And if this person ends up dying in custody, now law enforcement has an in-custody death, and that has to be reported to the Department of Justice. You're going to get special agents investigating that in-custody death. So why, as a watch commander, and I'm not speaking on me personally, but why, as a watch commander, why would I want him in my jail if I'm going to be criminally liable or something like that? And I think this is an honest question to ask the law enforcement leadership out there, right? Going back to that issue, when you're private security, you're going to have to face all of these issues. You're going to have to face all the challenges that law enforcement can't handle with minimal resources and very limited power. I mean, when I say power, you have the same power in most circumstances as any ordinary citizen, except you are able to be the owner's agent in trespassing incidents. That's why you have a little bit more power than a citizen, because you can exercise agent authority. So I can see that there's a lot of people viewing this video, and I want to hear from you guys. Like, what kind of stories do you have right now? Is law enforcement, are they not taking action? Like, why do you think that is? Are you seeing the end of it? If you work in the hospitals, are you seeing the outcome of this deteriorating situation? Does this lack of law enforcement response affect you and your work in private security? So I want to hear from you guys. I know that there's a lot of comments in the live, but I want to hear in the regular comment section box. I want to hear suggestions and your stories.